You're listening to another ambitious entrepreneurnetwork.com podcast, the voice for entrepreneurs and small business. Now, onto the show.
Welcome to Industry Thought Leader Podcast. Stand out, be heard, influence. Want to influence real change with your message while become known as an authority in your field? Industry Thought Leader Podcast will show you how. Now, over to your host, Anne-Marie Cross.
Welcome to another episode of Industry Thought Leader Podcast, brought to you by Industry Thought Leader Academy. Stand out, be heard, influence. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross, also known as the Podcasting Queen. Now, joining me on today's show is Eric Z. Zhang. And Eric, he is the founder of LeadNextGen, as well as a virtual summit expert. Just can't wait to dive into today's topic. Now, he is born and raised in Paris, and Eric built his first six-figure business at the age of 20 by hosting in-person conferences for leaders and entrepreneurs under 30. And he dropped out of school right after that. But you know what? He hated how unscalable in-person conferences were. So what he did was he hosted a couple of virtual summits, and his first virtual summit results have been crazy. Now, what he does today is Eric partners with 6- and 7-figure companies and influencers to build their virtual summits that systematically generate peak authority and leads to their business generating business, while also, of course, teaching young entrepreneurs how to get paid to learn from industry experts. Now, Eric is not holding back. He has said, I will answer all questions, even practical ones. So if you do happen to be joining us live today, please leave your comments and questions in the comment, and I'll bring those into today's show. But specifically today, Eric is going to help us know how to get paid to grow our authority, our email list and community with virtual summits, strategies to self-fund virtual summits through sponsorship, as well as the 7 benefits of hosting virtual summits for our business. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Wow, thank you so much for this introduction, Anne-Marie. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, look, we are now in a situation worldwide where virtual summits are definitely being talked about. In-person summits and conferences and events for many countries. I know here in Australia, where I am based, we are not allowed to meet with more than, I think, well, actually, my state, we're in lockdown again for the second time. But virtual summits, from what you've experienced, have really generated some incredible results. So just take us back to the first time. What made you, well, we know what made you. You kind of thought, I can't scale in-person events. So when you started doing your first virtual summits, were they kind of familiar? Were people talking, or was it quite a steep learning curve for you? Take us back to that first virtual event you did.
Right, that's a great question. The question is, like, how was experience for myself and for the speakers and attendees when they first came across the virtual summit I hosted back in 2017? So the easiest way for people to understand what a virtual summit is, if you have never heard of them or if you never attended one, is basically taking a webinar on steroids, where instead of having one speaker or one expert sharing a 1-hour lesson, you have 10, 20, 50, 50s even sometimes, similar to an in-person conference where if there was a workshop for 2 hours, instead of having one speaker, when you go to a 3-day conference, you have like many experts talking about the same theme that are going to be here to deliver a lot of value. So when I first brought up like what a virtual summit was to some speakers, because they're kind of familiar with digital marketing, they already knew what a virtual summit was. But for some of them who weren't that familiar, when they explained to me like, hey, like, what do you need me to prepare? Like, I would say nothing. Like, it is like a podcast interview, but we do video. I'll be asking the business questions, so you don't have to prepare anything besides the fact that you're about to be interviewed on this specific topic. And then I'll record it. And all the virtual summits, if not almost all of my virtual summits, are pre-recorded. Some people might think that a virtual summit are quite tough to pull off and to plan, which it can be if you make it live, where each speaker like is back to back to back, like an in-person conference. But you can make your life easier by, first of all, saying to the attendees that the virtual summit will be pre-recorded to make it easier for them to be able to rewatch sessions, to make it easier for yourself to be able to get the best speakers. Because when you have a speaker that you really want and his schedule is not as flexible as yours, well, you have to make yours flexible to get him or her on your virtual summit.
Yeah.
So when I got like this 35 entrepreneurs on the 35, my first virtual summit, I had roughly 1,000 attendees sign up for my virtual summit. And I did not spend any money on advertising, like was purely word of mouth, speaker promotion, nor did I even force them to do it. And I remember like generating literally up to 15 times more profit than my in-person conference and putting this off twice as fast as I did planning for my in-person conference again.
Yeah. So when you say, you generated so many more results, and we know what it's like just to organize, a 2-hour workshop, to imagine to bring together, people. There's so many logistics. And I mean, there's obviously things to organize behind the scenes for in-person, online too. But the beautiful thing about online summits, of course, is that logistics doesn't matter as far as audience is concerned. People can participate around the world. What were some of the ways that you were able to then monetize? Because that's what businesses are going to be thinking. All right, Eric, if we put together a virtual summit, do we charge entry fee or do we monetize it on the back end? What are some of the monetization strategies associated with this?
Great question. And those are like one of the 7 things, right? We talk about the benefits of hosting a virtual summit. One being the revenue. Obviously, like if you don't generate revenue from your business, then you don't have a business. You have a hobby around business themes, right? So there's many ways to generate money and revenue. It's either you do it upfront, on a back end, or both, right? So like a normal funnel, let's say it is a free virtual summit. So with the benefits of free as opposed to paid, which is on the tongue of many people's questions, is like, should I make my virtual summit free or paid? Like, which one makes the most sense? Well, the question is, again, like, what are your goals for yourself? Like any project, you need to know where you're going so they can reverse engineer your goals into actionable steps. Well, if your goal is to build an email list and build off authority and to have the most amount of eyeballs listening to you and your speakers, then free is a way to go. Like, this when it's like a free lead magnet, a free webinar has like much more chances for you of filling those seats as opposed to if it was a free or paid event or paid webinar. And the math is just here. Like, would you rather have 500 people who pay you $97 upfront, or would you have a free summit and have the potential of having like free 5,000, 10,000 attendees watching you for free and then being able to upsell them to another product in the future, right?
Yes.
Because when you have 10,000 attendees, even though they got a free ticket, and I record this if you can't see it, is because even though they might not buy from you now, they might buy you in the future. But because you have the emails, you're able to track them. And maybe even not within this year, but 2 years or 3 or 5 years later, because you still have the emails, they might have just clicked with the content that you have published, whether it's on your social media or your newsletter, or even like promote someone else's product. You'll be able to track them because you actually were able to get their emails. Now, free summit doesn't mean that the entire event is free per se, because the business model that I use is freemium business model, where it is free, where you can watch all recordings and sessions for 24 hours on each day. And let's say you have 30 speakers on a 3-day event. Well, you can have and dissect your days into 10 people session and be able to watch each day for free as much as you want, but nobody really has 10 hours in a day to watch recordings. But some people might just walk away with 1 or 2 main sessions and be like, oh, this session is so great, I would love to rewatch it again. And being able to do that, you offer what I call the all access pass.
Right.
Now, what is the all access pass? Is basically the all the sessions bundled together with some bonuses. And some bonuses are basically like blueprints, script, templates, action guide, a checklist, all the things that allows you to apply all the things that were taught on the virtual summit. And the best way for you to understand what makes a bonus so valuable is when you give content, you share what you do, right? Like, hey, let's use something concrete. Airbnb, right? We did an Airbnb summit. Like, hey, this is how you make money on Airbnb. Like, what kind of house you should look for, what kind of landlord you should negotiate with, what kind of furniture you have, and what kind of system you need to have on the back end to be able to manage your businesses, right? I can teach you all the things about the what, like what you do, but it doesn't mean that you know how to do it.
Yes.
And the bonuses actually help you actionize all the what into the how. And this is what people will like actually buy the bundle. Most of the time, not because of the content itself, but because of support bonuses that you offer on top of it.
Yeah, brilliant. And what I am hearing as you're explaining that, and I'm going to mention this in case anyone's missed it, to put together a summit, you really need to have an overall, well, what's the outcome that I'm looking for? And then integrate the various components that really create the strategy around that. And I think at the moment we're sitting in a situation where many organizations, even from, small SMEs right through to even larger businesses, are still waiting and seeing what's the economy going to do, as people are still, quite uncertain about what the future holds. So now is a really great time to start to build databases, build relationships with people around the world that you can continue to nurture. So when things do, and they will, start to rise again, that you've got your brand name, your awareness, and obviously positioned yourself as a trusted authority. So I think even the free or the freemium, as you've explained, where you sell on those recordings and add incredible valuable bonuses is obviously a really good strategy to put into place. Let's talk about one of the things, and this is always one of the things that people say to me, I'm not going to do podcasts, Anne-Marie, because technology is too overwhelming. I'm sure people are thinking, Eric, yes, love that, but is technology going to be a barrier that we need to overcome? What are some tech tools that you've used? Let's talk through some of those just to give a bit of awareness around that.
So I've done the homework where I literally almost every SaaS around Virtual Summit there exists to see like what a competition and market offers, on top of using the typical funnel builders that we know of, like ClickFunnels, Kajabi, Kartra, and the whole 9 yards. Like what I found is there's not a lot of things that Virtual Summit SaaS, like softwares that help you build a Virtual Summit, offers that other softwares like Kartra, ClickFunnels doesn't offer as well. Because the truth is, like, ultimately, like at the end of the day, what do you need to create a Virtual Summit is you need a host to ask the questions, so aka the content. You need to have a way for you to grab the email list, so like a CRM, and you need to have the website that allows you to deliver the content. Fundamentally, those are the three things you need. And after, obviously, you can get fancy, you can do live streaming, you can do like networking sessions, all of that. But I haven't seen a software that is so fundamentally so good that you need a Virtual Summit SaaS on top of a normal, digital marketing SaaS that we use for digital marketers. So my answer to you is there are some good softwares out there. The best ones I've seen were heysummits.com. They're not doing a bad job with it. There's also hopin.to, which is a SaaS a little bit more expensive than than Hey Summits, which offers you the availability to create networking rooms live, which is a great feature. But when I look at the cost of where you're hosting these sessions, where you are depending on two different software, the cost really adds up. So my best thing is if you use Kajabi, Kartra, or ClickFunnels, you can 100% build your Virtual Summit on it without needing any softwares.
Yes.
What I have done is I used WordPress in the past, and I shift to Kartra full time, and I just launched an entire Virtual Summit from A to Z on Kartra, which offers like all the things I need, such as CRM, membership sites, affiliate tracking, be able to give people the software codes, and all those kind of things. You don't need to complete yourself, because if you're not tech savvy, you can hire someone who is, and those people are not as expensive as you think they would. So people often ask me, like, how much does it cost tech-wise to host a Virtual Summit? And I will say to them, if you don't have any tech experience, it might cost you like top. If you hire someone to build like a basic funnel for you on a Virtual Summit software that you're familiar with, maybe like $500 to $1,000 top. And I've done mine like from A to Z, like by myself, without any experience on my first Virtual Summits, with less than $300. So it's not that expensive if you obviously know how to be resourceful.
Yeah, and with the tools that you mentioned and keeping it really simple, of course, and I think simple is so much better. I mean, you can overwhelm yourself with all the tech and the details. I think we need to be really organized and have a lot of the things created already, like the email set up and all of that. And then if we're pre-recording all of the videos and things like that, we're making sure that they're, published at the times and things like that. And of course, we're going to share with everybody at the end of today's episode how they can get a hold of you, because one of the things that I'm a firm believer in is don't reinvent the wheel yourself. You're not an expert in the organization of virtual summits, and I'm sure you have gone and made all of the mistakes, so that we certainly don't need to do that as well. So that's a little bit about the tech. Thank you for sharing that with us. So it's not scary at all. And really it sounds like, what's the budget that you have? What's your outcome? And let's work within that. Because one of the things I know to be true too, when you do a virtual summit and your audience really resonates beautifully with it, and you think, you know what, we want to start to use this as an annual strategy, or maybe even biannual, then you can look at, well, now, Eric, we want to ramp it up. What can we integrate now? And as we're building this, and then you can just add the layers on as you continue to relaunch that. Let's talk about something else that I know that you've probably done, and you can share some insights for us. That is around how to self-fund, because we've talked about some of the expenses. Maybe we don't have to fund that ourselves, but rather gather some sponsors around who can participate and collaborate and certainly sponsor that. What are some ways that you've perhaps done that we can perhaps look at doing as well?
This is another great question. And going back to your initial question, like, how do you make money, right? A lot of people going back to this question of free summit or paid summit. Obviously, you're going to have much more eyeballs on a free summit than a paid summit, which is obviously much more easy and attractive to a sponsor to say, like, hey, I have potentially 5,000 attendees on a virtual event, as opposed to, hey, I have 500 paid attendees to a virtual summit. So again, like, this is why we frame it as a free summit being better. And even though it might look or feel scary, it is not, because you actually get your expenses covered by the sponsor and you're able to be profitable before your event even starts. And being able to do that in a way that allows you to grow your authority and email list while being able to grow your revenue by making free is really powerful. So going back to your question, how do you raise sponsorship? So the whole question again is, what makes your event different from other people's events? Because there's two schools of thoughts of how to plan a virtual summit. And this might be deviate a little bit from your initial question, but this is really important. So I want to make sure that people who are listening to this, who are interested to host a virtual summit, understand this principle, which is your summit, virtual summit, closer to being a virtual summit that is a series of podcast interviews, or a virtual summit that's closer to a masterclass type of content? What do you mean by that? Is like a podcast, like, Anne-Marie, there are some people who record sessions, and even though you might have an overall theme, one interview doesn't necessarily lead to the other, or you listening to one interview doesn't allow you to understand better what someone else does on the next session. And every session are independent from one another, even though they might have an overall theme bringing them tied together, which is you, the host, and the theme of this podcast. But this doesn't make the audience feel, nor sometimes want, to watch all the sessions, because there are things that people might miss, which is normal. But when you actually frame it as a masterclass, which is treating a virtual summit as if it was a course crowdsourced through other people's expertise on one theme, then that changes the game. Why? Because like a course, you have a linear way to get someone through the journey of a customer from A to Z, where someone who doesn't understand exactly how to do some things, that'll be covered by another speaker. And not every session will be independent from another. Every session will be interdependent from another, where if you miss one, it's okay. But if you have totally no idea how to do something, then every session will lead you to understand the next one better. So this is actually going back to the question of what will someone buy from you? Well, if you have a course and you only watch 1 or 2 sessions, they won't want to buy the whole bundle, right?
Yes.
So going to the sponsor side is going back to what we're talking about Airbnb. Like, cool, well, you know what to do, you know how to do it, but do you have the tools or the software to allow you to do those things well? And this is where the sponsors come in, where you basically promote tools and softwares or people that you trust, that people will need or actually make their lives easier. And those sponsors, they already paid so much money to put their product in front of other people's eyes. But if there was a way for them to be in the center of a virtual summit by being basically like paying for access, pay to win, be able like, hey, during this whole summit, like you learn how to do A from Z on one specific theme. And the sponsor actually allows you to skip the line or bridge the gap even faster, because here's what the software does. Not only are the people indoctrinated about what you teach is so important and so powerful, but the software adds sprinkles on top, which is like the special like unicorn powder, where it's like, hey, if you use my content and from what the speakers are taught and use the softwares that, by the way, you got a discount form because the sponsor is really generous and you get paid to promote them, but you believe in them because you have used them otherwise, well, you're gonna get sponsorship money because it just makes sense for you. It makes sense for the audience. It makes sense for the sponsor. Everyone's winning here. And in average, we've raised $25,000 per virtual summit. And with that in mind, some people might think, well, do I need a big email list? My answer is no. Like if you got your messaging right, your offer right, your customer journey right, actually most of our sponsors, they didn't care that we have any like pre-existing email list, because most of my clients, when I first worked with them, 10 of them did not have an email list, but we raised an average $20,000 because we were able to sell the vision as opposed to what we're having. And obviously, if you don't deliver, well, we'll give you a refund, but we always try to deliver the most and we try to make things work. And this is how we raise sponsorship money.
I mean, brilliant that you've just, as you've mentioned that, Eric. And I'd imagine that just the fact alone where people can bring different voices to obviously the virtual summit is fabulous. However, as you've said, if you are able to, from a holistic point of view, look at all of those individual speakers as adding value and this speaker adds value to this and this and this, and then it becomes one big masterclass, what you're doing then is you're creating an environment where all of the attendees are encouraged to attend every single one because it's building a block. Now, if you think of this too, imagine if you, and you probably have already done this yourself, but imagine if you had some gamification things. I think that's the right terms. And then people who attended, there was a, something that they had to participate in to show that they had attended all of these. And at the end of all of the sessions, one person was to win a scholarship or something like that. That could also encourage participation. There's a lot of things that can be done within that, which I love. And I mean, if you think about what's happening now in the world, where many conferences, I think in the US, there are thousands of conferences running across the US every single day. Now, each of those conferences and events have sponsors, booth holders, and so forth. Those platforms are no longer available for those companies who have got budgets, obviously, to be able to, that they were going to invest in that area. Now, what better way to invest in an online, summit where their audience is there to participate in an environment where they're hungry, they need that information, and that sponsor. I'd imagine too that sometimes those sponsors can also get an opportunity to speak, to share a little bit about the platform, how it can work, how they can leverage it. So, really another benefit as well. I see it as a real win-win-win for everyone. Even more so that the audience can be even greater than if you were just, in location in one's place. So we've talked already about, or you've shared already about, a number of the different benefits altogether, but let's recap them. Let's finish this off powerfully. I can't see, I was convinced anyway before. I did a virtual summit years ago. What was it called now? Breaking the glass ceiling, or smashing the glass ceiling summit. It was. I tell you what, it was something else to be organised. So back then there were no people to help organise. We had to do it ourselves. And I think the years, I think I needed a few years in between before I thought, I'm never going to do that one again. So what are the 7 benefits? Let's recap them.
Yeah. First of all, I would love to piggyback on what you just said, which is sponsors, right? You don't need to educate sponsors on the benefit of sponsoring because I've done it so many times already. You just need to sell them on the benefit of sponsoring you, right? And this is so much easier conversation than trying to persuade someone to only sponsor, but then sponsor you, right? Sponsors love to sponsor, speakers love to speak. And I've never paid for any speaker throughout my entire life. 500 plus speakers across all our summits, not pay once, right? We got a CEO of Century 21 as a speaker that we could reach out to with an email list of 0. We didn't pay for him because we saw the attributes of, hey, how much will you pay to get in front of 2,000 idea of your customers? Well, a lot of money. Well, let me do that work easier for you. Like, would you like to speak in front of them for free? And this is like how you frame it, right? A lot of people undersell themselves, but you have to think about the value you bring on the table as well. And that is really important for you to remind, like, hey, you do like 3-4 months of work. When they just show up maybe in the underwear underneath it, you have no idea, but they look good on the top. And they show up for half an hour to talking about 2,000 people that you actually work your ass off to get them on the room. This is a huge benefit to them. So don't undersell yourself if you were to do it, right? So going back to the 7 benefits, we talked about 1 being revenue. It's a huge revenue generator. The second one is authority, right? Like when you invite 10, 20, 30 plus experts around the industry, even if you're not known, those speakers are known. Or even if they're not known, because you never know who you don't know. Like some people might think like, wow, I didn't know these people were actually famous or big within this industry. And you're able to grow your authority through osmosis, which is what I call the media effect, where you don't need to be the one who's famous. You just need to be the one who interviews the famous people. And you grow fame through osmosis because people associate them with you. And this is like the same thing with podcasts, right? Tim Ferriss podcast, where he interviews like billionaires and big artists, but he wasn't someone big before, but now he's even bigger than the brands that he brings on his podcast because he was able to build his authority through other people's fame and trust. So when you do that, you're putting your face at a centerpiece of 30 plus experts and you grow your trust. And when you do sell something, well, guess who someone's going to be buying from? Not the speakers, but you, because you were the only constant throughout all the sessions. So authority being second. Third is obviously the email list, right? Like you build a community, you build an email list. My personal opinion, there's no better way for you to mind blow someone with value, with content, with authority and trust in a virtual summit. Because what are the other options? You either, we'll talk about free, right? You have a lead magnet, a PDF, which is cool. You maybe have a checklist, which is cool. A webinar, which is cool. But if you give someone 20 to 30 hours of content on a specific theme, tackling someone's exact problems and be able to deliver the exact solution they need, like for free, if they don't want to pay, they can. Like talk about building trust and giving value up front, right? Yes. So the email list is going to be engaged. They're going to love you. And people who don't, at least they got a taste of who you are and your personality. Like your personality will shine throughout the interviews, which is something that you can't really portray or show on a webinar funnel or on a checklist. So be able to give this human-to-human approach is really powerful, especially on the sales where people don't buy the product anymore. They buy from you and what you can do for them. And they have to trust you first. So email list being the third one. The fourth one, and feel free, by the way, I'm married to cut me out whenever you want to go deeper into something, right? So the fourth one is being able to build your speaking engagement gigs, because weirdly, I don't know if I'm sure this happened to you, Anne-Marie, but when you interview someone, people who listen to you associate you being with a speaker. And they might be like thinking like, oh, wow, Anne-Marie or whoever the host is, like, you spoke so well. But when you actually dissect the content, the only time you spoke was when you introduced someone and when you asked the questions, right? But I trust me, like it happens to every single one of our hosts. Is when you host, people invite you to speak on other people's podcasts or show or events because you invite so many speakers, and someone's gonna associate you with the speakers, and you're gonna get so many more speaking gigs, like free speaking gigs, paid speaking gigs. Those things will come to business. So if you want to speak, host the speaking platform, which will allow you to train only like stages with the speakers and host events, coordinators, but you also be able to be invited to speak. So speaking gigs being the fourth one. The fifth one is building your business lead gen. Once again, like this goes a little bit with the email list side, but you being able to upsell your course, your mastermind, your product during or after the virtual summit. And this is a good way for you to also like pre-sell a beta course to an audience to see if the course or the product is something that they want. Because when you have a pool of 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 ideal customers, if you put your offer out there and nobody buys, then you have time for you to revisit this idea of thinking like, wow, this thing is actually not something that people want. So you're gonna readjust and maybe like offer a different type of beta test pre-sale to your course and programs. And then those things gonna be like working because the people you sell to, they actually are your ideal customers. And being able to not guess within your own head, but be able to see what the market is responding to is really powerful.
Yes.
So that's the thing. The sixth thing is build your network, which is something you talked earlier, Anne-Marie. When you invite speakers, you are basically to rub shoulders with industry giants, so people who are trusted. And if you were to come into a room and be like, hey guys, my name is Eric. And they'd be like, okay, cool, you're cool. What do you have? Well, I have a course. Everybody has a course or something like that, right? But if you come to a room, it's like, hey guys, I have a platform where I can feature you in front of 2,000 ideal audiences that you would dream of getting, and they're dying to learn from you. You have something that not a lot of people have, which is a platform that allows you to shine and broadcast lights onto someone's work. Like a podcast, it's really powerful to be able to invite people. And because now they emotionally invest in you, they want to know how you can be supported by them. So they're going to be invited into like masterminds, to like their courses. You're going to be offered different types of services. And this has countlessly happened to me and my clients, where it opens doors to you because you have a platform or a master key that is not owned by a lot of entrepreneurs out there. So that's the sixth one, the network. And the seventh one is my favorite one here, which is you're able to treat every single session as if it was a 1 hour VIP session with your dream guest. What do I mean by that? The best interviews and the best sessions are the ones that you need the most. When, let's say you are in the certain industry and you're like, let's say in the beauty industry, and you interview someone who is really good at Facebook ads. Well, you can ask this person who is an expert at Facebook ads all the selfish question that you have about your own business, about how you can use Facebook ads to grow your business. And you can invite and interview the best of the best of in this industry and be able to ask yourself this question that you have so that they can help you grow and fix your problems, and while also broadcasting this solution not only to yourself but to your audience. And I know that I will have needed to pay like $5,000 or $10,000 for a 1 hour session with some speakers, because I frame it under this idea of being an interview. I was able to ask them the questions I wanted, and then thanking me for inviting them on my show. Yeah. So this allows you to have virtual mentors you can reach out to at any time and get strategy sessions at the right time, at the wrong moments, and then get paid to learn because your audience pays you to get access to this content. So those are the 7 things I talk about. I know I rush a little bit through it, but
it's great. Yeah, I think that's valuable because, you know, it's 7 reasons why, again, and adds value to everything that we've already spoken about. So one of the things that you mentioned, you know, about imagine having 30 hours. So you mentioned an hour. So I'm assuming you're the ones that have worked really well for you have been about an hour long. Is that right? 30 minutes to an hour. What's the time frame of best interview?
Yeah, there are some great interviews that last 3 hours, and there are some shady interviews that last half an hour, right? And the opposite is true. As long as you're clear on what is interview sessions going to be about, if it goes beyond that purpose, then it's time for you to stop. Whether it's 20 minutes or 40 hours in one session, as long as you believe it's going to be valuable for the audience, it is going to be valuable. There's no a good timeline, but if you had to have one, I would say half an hour to 45 minutes is most of the time enough for someone to be able to deliver deep, valuable content.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned 30 is 30 a good number of people to be on a like 10 each day, or what sort of around kind of average that you've seen from the ones you've done?
I would say for virtual summit, more than 12, less than 30, especially if it is your first virtual summit. Don't kill yourself with content. Don't kill yourself with coordination and management, but have enough to be attractive to the eyes of the attendees who will come to your events.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think if you're talking about from a masterclass aspect, and obviously today we're talking on the the podcast Industry Thought Leader. So these people are wanting to build their reputation as those trusted authorities. So, you might say if you're doing it over a 3-day, is to divide the number, but have value so that every day, each speaker adds value to what each one's saying, and then each day builds on as well. So similarly to let the interview be as long as it needs to be to deliver value and to dive deep enough that people walk away and think, my goodness, that was valuable. Similarly with the number of people, you don't want a people stack, do you? And just have people talking for the sake of talking as well. Did you find that with the sponsorships that most virtual events allow the sponsors to have a bit of an interview or a bit of a profile feature for them too? Or typically it was like, this summit is brought to you by X, Y, and Z. What kind of is the yeah?
So nobody's allowed to sell unless they have been given authorization to. And the only people that we authorize are the sponsors, which is like, hey, pay to speak. No, pay to get on stage on our virtual stage, right? Mm-hmm. And we have different tiers, like just 4 tiers. The most basic one is bronze, which is like basically have your logo up there, but you have no like speaking spot. Silver is you have a speaking spot and your logo. Gold is we're actually going to run ads with your face next to high profile entrepreneurs so that your face can be associated with those high profile people. And the ultimate one is the platinum one, which is like, hey, we're going to put your brand underneath our logo. So it's going to be like, hey, Crypto Virtual Summit brought to you by platinum sponsor, so that their brand is going to be always for a X amount of time, which is like 6 months to a year, associated with our brand, so that whenever we are mentioned, they're going to be mentioned because that's the logo, that's the brand, right? And people think that, wow, the platinum sponsor created the event, and we give them the impression of it. It's like, hey, it was actually them who financed the whole operation, because technically it is true. And the most we ever raised from one sponsor on a virtual sponsor event was a sponsor gave us $45,000 to be that platinum sponsor.
Wow. Yeah, amazing. And can you recall how many people attended?
4,200.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what, when you think about that, I mean, that in itself, I think is fantastic, because it really shows that sponsors are invested, get the right message, got the right audience. They really can see the value, which, the current situation that we're in, actually, I think moving forward now, people are going to realize the benefits even more so of niched audience. So one other question that I had too around, you mentioned something and I thought, I must ask you on that. You said no one is allowed to sell unless they've been authorized. So with the speakers, did you then say to them what you could offer is a gift or something to grow their list? Or what did that look like for the speaker's point of view?
Yeah. Some people might be put off. It's like, oh, I'm giving my time for free. Like, why would you not be allowed to sell? Well, first of all, you want to be protective of your own audience. You want your event to be a pitch fest, because people will be like, what the hell? It's free, but I don't like it, right? Like, you want to make sure you're protective of your own audience. Once again, the perspective I gave earlier is, well, how much will you spend to get in front of those people? A lot of money. And the third thing is like, hey, if you don't want to speak, that's fine. I got 1,000 other people who would love to speak for free. So, but you're not doing that while you're losing in front of your competition. So, if they don't really want us pay or they want to speak, that's fine. Like you also don't want to be people who are always like so money focused upfront, because they don't understand the value of being able to connect and be able to add value to a potential super connector in this industry. So you being able to understand, like, sit within your own power and value, and realize that if someone doesn't want to pay or doesn't want to speak unless they get the option to pitch, then maybe not the best partnership for you to have within your industry or your own community, right? Going back to your other question, which was which was pitching. Sorry, I forgot the question.
Yeah, no. So with the speakers, obviously they need to lead with value, and
Yes.
we don't want it to be a pitch fest. And I think if speakers are still thinking that the object of the game is to get on the stage and pitch, I think those days are well and truly gone. Whether you like it or not, we really. So do we encourage them to say, well, look, I'm happy for you if you've got a free gift that's going to add even more value. How do they access that? That's what you have.
Got it. So the way we do it is we add it actually on the bonuses. We stack the bonuses so that when people buy recordings, not only do they get my bonuses, but they get the speaker's free bonuses. But we're like, hey, the value of this bonus is like $47, but it's free for you if you buy the Access Pass. And then from this bonus, if there's like a lead way for them to capture emails, we allow that. But them sending hard on assignment, no. But them having an email that's practical and valuable on top of having a call to action to jump on a phone call with you or subscribe to an email list or a product, that we allow. But we only give it to the people who pay for it because the logic for us is we only want to send qualified leads to our speakers, but also the flip side is you don't want to give access to email list to speakers to your entire email list, right? So it's a way for you to protect yourself, but also give value to the speakers from this perspective.
Yeah. And I love the way that you've mentioned that the people so in other words, you encourage all of the speakers to put something that is worth value again within the bonus package. And then that bonus package is given then to the people who invest in a ticket. Now, the people who invest in a ticket have often obviously more investment into that and they've actually paid. So in other words, the people who will then come across to the speaker's, gift that has been given are more likely then to be a higher value client or higher prospect because they've actually parted with their dollars. I like that because I think it's all around the giving value. And then the fact that, public exposure in front of so many more people that you may not have been able to reach out to is certainly valuable. What would you say as we finish off are some of the key mistakes, just so that people are aware of, they may think, oh, I'd love to do this, or maybe, some of the other people who are doing summits online, we need to not do that anymore because it's no longer relevant. Obviously, Pitch Fest, no. Selling virtually, no. That's definitely a no. What are some other no's? Don't do this.
There's two main things that I often tell people. One, just because you're a virtual summit, even though that has become almost the norm now, doesn't mean that your virtual summit will be profitable. There's, like you said, don't reinvent the wheel, but there's a system behind making sure that the summit is actually valuable to the people, not just like a general lead gen for you. And people now, they're getting smarter and smarter. Like when they smell that they're getting pitched to, they're going to be sold to, they're not going to trust you, right? And you, once again, going back to what we talked earlier, the journey of a customer and attendee that goes through your virtual summit is important. You understanding what's the intention, what the pain point, and the solution they can bring on the table allows them to then discover, like, hey, if this is what this person gives me for free, like, I wonder what amazing things this person would do for my business and my life if I were to pay him or her. So being able to do that, give value up front, and you will be rewarded for it. Not only to the attendees, but treat the speakers correctly, which is leading to my second point, where so many people beg speakers or force speakers to promote. I never do that. I always try to be self-sufficient with marketing. And obviously, I offer that to speakers like, hey, I appreciate your session. If you want to share that to your audience, I'll give you a link. But if you don't want to do it, I'm fine with it. I'll take out promotion for you. And I think a lot of speakers, especially when I started back in 2017, a lot of high-profile speakers, they would trick into getting invited to a virtual summit, and then the host bombarded them with emails saying like, hey, now you are on the summit, you have to promote. And this is an amazing way for you to destroy any relationship or future partnership with people who can have helped you to get into rooms that you want to be in, but because you were greedy or you were too upfront without actually even being transparent with the intention of you getting them on the summit, actually destroy your potential of doing business with anyone, because like words like that travel fast in this industry that is especially not that big or as big as you think it was. So which is like the sponsorship strategy where you actually use the sponsorship money to invest into the ads, so you don't have to ask speakers to promote, allows you to add value to them, make the speakers happy, make the sponsor happy, make the attendees happy, because you don't make anyone become a sponsor and only a sponsor can promote. Then you build this ecosystem of transparency and value. And something that I realized is that my first summit, I had 1,000 people. I made 9,000 US dollars in profit, which is, a good amount, but not as much as I wanted. But on the back end, 3 speakers hired me at a 25,000 US dollars price point to work with me, because I was able to treat them the way I like to be treated. And like, this is how business works. Like, you might make money, but not in the way that you think you were going to make money. So being able to do those 2 things, which is one, once again, just because you have a virtual summit doesn't mean it will be profitable. Learn from someone, don't reinvent the wheel, and follow the guideline. And then when you have done it once or twice, add your own touch to it. That's number one. Second thing is, treat speakers correctly and don't force them to promote, and be the one that basically create the event you wish you had, and treating everyone the way that you want to be treated.
Yeah, I love that. As you said there, around really building that relationship with the speakers, one of the things that I love about what you've said was reinvest or invest the monies from the sponsorships into advertising, because what happens is you get a clean list. Because how many times do speakers they kind of all know one another, and if the viewer or the potential participant is on multiple lists, all of a sudden they're bombarded with, hey, come to this. And I think you really can muddy the waters, if that's the right term to use. One question I do have, say for instance, you're the organizer of the summit, and obviously what you're saying, a freemium model, people can attend for free, but if they want to get all access to the recordings, they're able to pay for that. Do you obviously, if the speakers are not contributing any of their list or so forth, that funds that you generate from the sale of those tickets, the upsell tickets, that's then the organisers, isn't it? You don't kind of share
Correct.
that with the speakers.
Yeah, that's also like a really common misconception, Anne-Marie, is that the revenue generated from your summit is yours. In the same way that when you have someone on your podcast, me giving content to your audience, right? Like, I don't expect getting a profit share of your months, because it doesn't make sense. The same principle applies on a virtual event, because it is really close to a podcast format where you do the work as a host, I do my work as a contributor of content, and it's the same people who visit my stage to come to me. Then like, maybe we can talk about it, but I don't expect you to pay me because I give you content. And the 100% of profit is yours if you don't have any other business partners or stuff like that. Maybe you can negotiate with a sponsor of hey, I'll give you $20,000 to give me those leads, and also maybe like a percentage of sales. That is fair, because they have invested financially into you. But the speakers,
Yeah. One other question that I have, this is really interesting.
Shoot.
I love
it.
Of course. Thank you so much. This has almost become a masterclass in and of itself. Just to give people an indication, and I know that this is, again, how long is a piece of string, but typically if we were going to do a 3-day summit and we had, great speakers, what is the lead time that we should allow in our calendars to successfully, get this going? I mean, what typically is your time frame?
So, 2-part answer is, one, are you going to have sponsor or not? Because sponsors, the way that they operate, especially at a corporate high level, is they have a dedicated sponsorship budget for each quarter, right? If you reach out to them mid quarter 1, they won't be able to allocate those budget until quarter 2 or quarter 3. So it takes you between 2 to 3 months from the time you reach out to them to actually, unfreeze the funds into your bank accounts. That takes a longer time frame. So which is why, like, when we work with a client, we said to them, like, hey, we can do a summit in 45 days, which we have done. But because we want to focus on building a relationship and sponsorship deals for you, we'll work with you for 4 to 5 months to make sure that you can actually use that fund to marketing, right? So part 1, sponsorship, 4 to 5 months. Or what you can do is do it the way we do it is you reach out to sponsors. It's like, hey, we can do it now. Okay, back to us later, which is often what they're going to say. you launch a virtual summit in 90 days, which is something that we recommend to people. And then you relaunch it 19 days later, reaching out to the sponsor, reach out on round one, being able to not only do that, but show them metrics and data and information of how your summit performed. And now you have a much stronger case because now you have the social proof, you have the testimonials, you have the attendees, you have the reviews, and also you can show them that the funnel is working, right? It's much easier for them to trust you, but also be able to start a conversation before anything happens to show that not only do you follow through your words, but your actions are actually backed by your words.
Yeah.
And that is a really strong case. And the last thing I would say, like for that sponsorship part, Anne-Marie, is if a sponsor doesn't sponsor you, you can always ask like, hey, do you know any companies or other people who might be interested to speaking for 2,000 people or 5,000 people? And sponsor will sometimes refer you to the right people. And this is how we close like 20, 30K deals. Like sponsor wasn't great fit because financially doesn't make sense for them, but they have someone else they often do business with at the agency level, and they paid my clients 30K, and it was a perfect fit, and they still work together now after 2 years.
Yeah, I can see, especially moving forward with people now being so much more au fait and realize that what they can tap into expert wise, and the fact that they don't have to travel across, although some people, they do like the face-to-face networking. I think, virtual summits, it may even be something that you may do annually. You may look at developing some real key alliances with your speakers, because that's opportunities too, that you can work together. I'm kind of mapping out my calendar.
So on that, Emir, sorry to cut you out, but virtual summit is something you can launch every month. Actually, because you have all the content already, you have the funnel built already. It can be evergreen. So we have actually summits that are launched every day, meaning that when someone signs up on a date, it starts with them 2 days later, and the whole automated sequences make them feel as if it was live. We'll tell them it's pre-recorded summit, but experience it is like a live summit.
Yeah.
So
you're using it also as an evergreen. So in other words, you may have one summit that is obviously you might have the 30 speakers, but then you kind of continue to release with new people coming in. Is that what
you're saying? You do in batches, like you have 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, where you keep the best interviews and you actually survey the people like, hey, which interview you like the most, which one you like the least, and you periodically take out the worst, right? And refuel with new sponsors, new speakers. And the data backs up, because then you have like not 5,000 people, but when you say people like, hey, I have an event that actually gets 1,000 new people every month, like it gets 9,000, 10,000, and the sponsor gets happy because they don't sponsor one event, they sponsor you 6 months, and maybe there's 10 events within this time frame, right? So sponsors, when they sponsor only one event at an in-person conference, but when it's virtual, it has the potential to be relaunched all the time, which makes you, the host, happy because you get new leads every single time and new funding every time. And you can have like a 2.0 wave of sponsorship where, hey guys, it was 5K before, but that's 15K because we got more credibility and audience, customer base.
Yeah, and if you think about many of the ways that people are now connecting online, an integrated approach is one that I always share with people. If they're putting a podcast platform together, integrate it with the things that you're doing. Now, imagine from someone's positioning for a sponsor to say that you've got this summit and it's an evergreen continuing to build, and then we also have a podcast. We of live stream across all different platforms too. The reach that you could potentially, the promise of value to a new, to a sponsor is incredible. I mean, my goodness, I don't think I'll be sleeping tonight. I'll be.
I want to finish with this, Anne-Marie, like sponsor for podcast, sponsor for virtual summit. But when you have a virtual summit, like you said, people will want to meet up, right? A question I always get asked is, should I do a virtual summit or should I do an in-person event? Like, like the face-to-face approach. Of course, like that's one of the the cons of a virtual summit. But one of the pros is you being able to connect with people around the world, which is something an in-person conference can't have. So the question is not like, should I do an in-person event or a virtual event? And I say both if you can. Pre-sell your in-person conference from the people who attend your virtual summit, because the odds of someone liking your in-person conference after attending your in-person your virtual event is super high. You can have a trifecta of sponsorship where it's like events for online, in-person, and podcast. And this is how you build a tribe. Because you know this, if you host in-person workshop, is where do people hang out after or in between events? They have no place. But you're having a virtual space where people can hang out, meet in person, and virtually go back, hang out again, while having a podcast that monitors them content every week. That allows it to be always giving them content and people to be able to connect it with on a constant and daily basis.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? Add to that the conference, the in-person conference. You blend in people that are not yet clients with your existing clients. So you might tack on a mastermind for the clients and stuff. And you get the two in the room. Those clients who work with you and are getting great results could just be what, you may launch to. My goodness, yeah. We someone strategy, amazing. I've loved this. Thank you so much, Eric. It's been an absolute pleasure. I featured you. We've turned this into a masterclass in and of itself. Now, please share with people, how do they reach out to you? What's the best way for them to connect?
So I have a website called LeadNextGen, which is my virtual summit agency. You can follow me at YangEric20 on Instagram. I also have a book on how to launch a virtual summit on Amazon called the Virtual Summit Launch Formula. And just let me know and reach out to me via Instagram if you have any questions about virtual summits. And obviously, like this talk that I have with you, Anne-Marie, like I'm sure like sparked a lot of ideas for you, but I'm sure for your audience as well. And the last thing I want to leave you guys with is virtual summits is not new. It has been here for a long time. It is even more of actual like a thing right now because of COVID-19, and it will not stop after it. It's just sparked even more momentum. And I would say that the podcast train is so real. But if you started like 5-10 years earlier, like just imagine how big you would have been, right? The same thing with Virtual Summit. If you start early, you'd be able to build a solid customer fan base, which allows you to do amazing things in the future.
Yeah. Do you know that you said that I started podcasting back in 2008? Like she was audio in 2005. But what you said then, sometimes you just got to go out there and do it. And you start off with an audience of one, not that you would be able to start off. You'd certainly start off with a much bigger audience when you're doing virtual summits. But as business owners, you've got to think of long-term. We've got to think of long-term strategy and building. And because every time we are sharing our message and we do that consistently and we do that with real value, you are going to stand out from everybody else, especially I know the people who are listening and watching to this, because they're experts, they're specialists already, poised as thought leaders, trusted authorities. And, when you create a platform, whether it be a podcast or in this instance, a virtual summit, and you are the host, you are the consistent, there's just something that elevates your profile. Because as you said, which is so true, you are the conduit that brings all of these people together. And, that's powerful, that's priceless. And get the right strategy, get people on your team, such as Eric, and fast track that for you. By the way, he's not sponsoring this either. That conversation. So thanks once again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.